going on? I wanted to do an update today, and sometimes I do these updates in a form where there are specific topics that I'm going to go over, and then you may notice that sometimes I do updates where it's a little bit more of a stream of consciousness almost. And I kind of do that for a specific reason. That reason really is just that I do want to not just seem like I have every aspect of my life just together and I'm always planning everything I say, because I don't really believe you can truly be genuine if you're always planning everything that you say. And that's always been really important to me in these videos, is not to have it just be what I want people to hear, but I want this to be real. So I do have a few topics that I did want to talk about today, but first I did just want to do a little bit of an update on myself and kind of where I'm at with things. So if you've kept up with my last few videos, you may have noticed that I went through a bit of a hard time the last couple weeks, and I have still kind of been going through that, but I'm starting to get to the other side of it, and I've realized a lot of things that have really shifted my perspective in the last few days, and some things that I also need to work on in order to continue my growth in a healthy way. And yeah, just to get right into it, I had that slip up like a week and a half ago, and I've been clean since then. So things are a lot better than they were. It's interesting though, because I feel that I've learned so much in the last couple months that I feel like I'm just not operating in the same way that I was before. When the slip-ups have happened, it's been very different than it was in the past. I moved past them a lot quicker than I did before, and I'm not getting as caught in these like loops where I, continue to have it happen. Each one has really been feeling more like a learning experience when it has happened, and I'm really taking the lessons from each one and actually implementing them into my life. And that's been a pretty major change. I feel like I'm starting to get back to not just an older version of myself, but also like kind of getting into a newer version of myself where I don't feel as constricted by this anymore, which feels really good. I don't feel the same pull that I felt before. It's actually really not. Here's the hard thing, I guess, about this particular addiction. So it can feel like it's helpful to you because you're trying to run away from something for most people, whether that's stress or something you're dealing with that you need relief from. And it actually may feel like it's working in the moment. That's why it is so hard to stop for a lot of people, including myself, because it does feel like it works. But the funny thing about it though is that it really actually does the opposite in the long term. It's a short-term fix, and it's very short. I mean, it really will not, it's like you're chasing something that is not actually going to help the problem in any way. In fact, it's probably going to make the problem worse later, most of the time. And once I kind of started to realize that, it really changed things for me, because I wasn't operating in this way where I was just always looking at the near future anymore. And that's really been the biggest perspective change that I've had throughout this whole process. And I don't just mean the last couple months, I mean the whole time I've been practicing abstaining from this. I've really realized that if you think short term, there's just no way that you're ever going to fully overcome it. You have to start thinking in the long term. And just remember that each decision that you make, it's kind of like casting a vote for the person that you want to become. And I know that may sound a bit dramatic, but it's actually true. Like, if you want to build a great life, have great friendships, a great relationship, when you are doing something destructive and you know it's destructive for yourself, you are actually casting a vote for the person you don't want to become. And over time, those votes can really make an impact on you, even if it seems subtle at first. I will tell you from experience that I did not realize how much it was impacting me at first. It took a while before I started to realize that it was really not helping my life. And it sucks that it took a life-changing event for me to fully understand that, but I feel like I understand that better now than I ever have before. So that has been helpful. But one thing I did want to talk about today, and I'm actually both talking about it, but I'm also sort of asking for advice as well. And that is this idea of chronic overthinking. Some people are more prone to it than others, and I know for a fact that if you are trying to overcome an addiction, sometimes your mind actually might be overactive during certain points. But for me, I'm actually just someone who tends to overthink in general. I have a more of a tendency, I think, than a lot of other people from my experience talking to people. I just am fairly certain about that. And I've been doing some things to work on chronic overthinking. Thinking is not a problem with it when it's just about something that's actually important to you, or that if it's a topic that takes a lot of thinking, right? But I think when overthinking can become problematic is when something very basic, or it doesn't even have to be basic, but something that doesn't require much thought keeps entering your brain and you keep trying to solve it, but sometimes there's no explanation. And that's the problem that my brain sometimes faces. Is I'll have something happen in my life, like let's say a work thing doesn't work out. Maybe I didn't end up getting a raise. And sometimes my brain will take something like that and it will start trying to fill in these puzzle pieces of, oh, well, maybe I didn't get the raise because of this. And this is hypothetical, but this is just an example. Or it'll say, well, maybe this person thought this and maybe this. And then like your mind will almost start to believe some of these things, even though it's all just in your head. And that is kind of what I am trying to work against and counteract a little bit more. And I have found a few things to be helpful, but I'm definitely still wanting to work on that. And I realize that to a certain degree, you kind of are born with the brain that you have, and you can't help everything. Sometimes your brain just may be a little bit overactive, and you do kind of have to work with that. But at the same time, there are some things that I've noticed that I can do that do help a little bit. One of those things is immediately shifting my focus onto something else. And that part is easier said than done sometimes, but it does help. For example, I was laying in bed a little bit longer than I should have this morning, and my mind was just going in all sorts of directions, and I had to just say to myself, okay, I'm gonna get up and I'm going to start to get ready to go for a run. And once I started doing that, it started getting a lot better immediately. And I guess that is part of the solution, but one thing that I sometimes run into is when I'm overthinking, but I don't want to do something physical, for example, or not something where it's super involved. And what I mean is, let's say I'm laying in bed about to get ready to go to sleep, or sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and it'll start happening. And in those instances, sometimes I'm not quite sure how to deal with that, because I don't want to go get up and exercise at 3 in the morning. I guess I could journal or something like that, or I could maybe do something that's not loud. But it's, once I start waking my mind and body up though, and it's like 3 in the morning, it can be hard to go back to sleep after that too, which is another issue. But sometimes the overthinking thing does actually cause me not to always sleep well too. I'll usually fall asleep fine, but then a lot of times in the night at some point I'll wake up, and it'll usually be around 5 a.m. or something like that, which not the worst thing if you're going to bed early, but a lot of times I'm not going to bed super early, so it's a little problematic. So yeah, I'd appreciate if you guys have any advice on that. It's something that has not always been a huge problem, but I think as I'm going through some of these changes in my life, and everything is changing, it has become a little bit harder, I think, sometimes to avoid that overthinking, and the thought loops is another thing. That part I've started to get a little bit better with, but there's still certain ones where I catch myself doing it, and part of it is that I think they need to be acknowledged, and you have to do your best to put them to rest at a certain point. But anyways, would love to know you guys' thoughts, and I'll update again soon.